Hello and welcome to this Destiny PvP tips video today. My name's Cal, and I'd like to bring up the subject of large-scale maps for the Trials of Osiris map rotation. I think that First Light was an indication from Bungie that we're going to see some more large-scale maps. I'm banking on it. I think that it's going to happen, and so it'd be a good idea for those who want to continue improving in Trials of Osiris to know how to play big maps, because they're not normally part of our rotations in 3s or even in 6s now. We don't have control with First Light anymore. So I thought I'd make a video on my own tips and overall strategy for these sizes of this size of map, and so that you as a viewer and a player of Destiny can be better prepared for when, not if, another large map it will be featured. Alright, well, going right into it, perhaps the most important thing to keep in mind and to be aware of for this size of a map is to use the limitations of your radar to your advantage. Your radar covers quite a big area around you. When you're in small and medium-sized maps, you can tell a flank is coming in on you pretty easily on the smaller maps like Cauldron or something like that. It only really starts to diminish when it's a map like Widow's Court, but it becomes even more diminished on a map the size of First Light or Skyshock. And remember that when you can't see somebody on your radar, it's vice versa for the enemy team, and use that to your advantage. When your teammates are in trouble, dip out of radar to the point where you can't see any red on yours, but you need to know first, figure out where the enemy is, and we'll get into that later, and then make an effective flank by going all the way around the map to be able to get an angle that your enemy will not expect. And you can even still be able to get an angle without even being on their radars. Now, before any effective flanking can be done, getting a feel of your opponent, what weapons they're using, the places that they typically like to go, is a very important thing to do for any Trials map, really, but even more so on the large maps, because it's so difficult to just find your enemy in the first place before you can even begin an engagement. So the best thing to do is to take mid-map control immediately, and you do this by using cover to your advantage. Whenever you're moving on a large map, there's such large portions of empty space where you can be easily seen and shot at by a sniper or a scout rifle. You want to be moving in and out of cover. Right when you spawn in, find the next closest place, like a rock or a building, that you can get behind or hug as you move towards the middle of the map. Once you get there, you have a greater chance of knowing where the enemy is, left, right, in front of you, behind you, or something like that. Maybe even they're trying to flank you, and then you can make callouts to your teammates and begin an engagement as a team. The other time that you might be able to do this is if your enemy is predictable, if they're doing the same thing, if they go one direction every single time. Like on First Light, there's a sniper rock to the left close to the B flag building. You can swing all the way around, or probably right off the bat with the Sparrow, and get angles as fast as possible. Now, next, as a player, you'll have to be willing to attempt to play different loadouts and different types of weapons. For a large map, that means going with weapons that can cover medium to long range or medium to very long range. Now, this is the loadout that I settled upon. I used my Satyrian Rapier. I settled on the ranged lens RLL5, which is, it feels exactly like the Meta multi-tool scope. It has life support, hidden hand, and I throw on rangefinder because the other perks take too much of my magazine away. And also, too, in big maps like this, the range stat really begins to make a huge difference. The Meta multi-tool was it can be an effective choice, and I went with it a couple of times, but it's extremely limited in how far it can shoot. It's actually very short, but it has never really been noticeable outside of maps like this. But remember that the range stat not only affects damage fall off, but it also affects the hitbox size of the enemy. With a scout rifle or a sniper rifle that has max range, you're going to be able to more easily and more accurately, quote unquote, pull off headshots from extremely far ranges. For the special weapon slot, I decided actually to go with a sidearm to complement a scout rifle, which is I found very effective to pair with a scout rifle on a large scale map. Now here is my sidearm. I used the Iron Wreath D with Reactive Reload, Feeding Frenzy, and Reinforced Barrel just to give it that little extra range. The sidearm, acting very much like a last word, it allowed me to counter the bum rushing shotgunners that I would occasionally find, and also too it would allow me to be able to close gaps on people and have something very effective to fight with at close ranges, while they were trying to use Jade Rabbits and scout rifles and sniper rifles at close ranges to fight it. Alright, now that brings us to the third and the final tip that I think is important to do before you load up your Trials card with your teammates. It's actually a really good idea to go into a private match with your teammates and decide on callouts together. Decide what building is called what area is called what, so that there's no confusion. Nothing's more frustrating when you get sniped and you're trying to give a callout and you're like, he's over at that one building thing, and your teammates are like, I have no idea where that is. If you decide on callouts together and you say, no, he's at Zone B building, second floor, they know exactly where to look. And then less confusion means less frustration, and you guys will have a greater chance of having each other's back, getting into position quicker, and hopefully you have a better chance of finding success and hopefully going flawless. So that brings me to the end of this tips video, and I hope that I find that anyone who is watching this finds it helpful. I hope that it also lessens the amount of saltiness over the First Light being the Trials map for this last weekend. I was a little taken off guard by it, especially after the last two spooky Trials weekends and that kind of a bit of a debacle, but I actually began to like this once I was willing to change my loadout and to change how I approach Trials of Osiris in terms of larger scale sandbox. So with that, I will sign off, and I hope that you Guardians have a good one.